We're talking about two distinct things today. We're talking about Europe and we're talking about strategy and how companies should be thinking about how they reposition themselves, how they should be pivoting, and some broader strategic matters that'll come up in the course of the call. We have with us today Harry Moore, who is with NMS Consulting. He is a turnaround specialist. He's worked at some of the best consulting firms in the world and across Europe and other territories. He is going to cover the Europe section as well as the strategy section. And then our colleague John, who is the president of Frankfurt Rhein-Main Corporation and the North American representative to for Frankfurt. He'll be talking about not only Frankfurt, but Europe in a broader sense, and all the things that Frankfurt is seeing as, with their role as a hub city. They see all kinds of interesting things, and we're very proud to announce, and I think that this is public, that NMS is opening up an office in Frankfurt very soon. Is that right, Harry?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, we've got one in Berlin.
Excellent.
In Frankfurt.
And Frankfurt is up next. So, yeah, let's go ahead and get started. We're still having technical issues with our friend John, but let's jump in. Harry, I have it on good authority that you're a wizard. Harry Potter jokes got to happen.
Harry Potter jokes got to be there with Harry. Yeah. I wish I had his wand sometimes. It would be really great to the instantaneous turnaround of a business. No, I'm not a wizard.
What's your wizardly view of Europe right now and what's going on?
What's good on it? Well, it's challenging times, but it's the same with the USA, I guess. It's no different over there. We've got different success rates with COVID-19 in Europe. Germany, Denmark seem to be recovering. Germany, I've noticed, is opening up this week. Shops are opening up, retail's opening up, and some public transport. And John can probably comment on that as well. I do spend a lot of time in Germany myself. Interesting story that came out of Germany this morning on the BBC News was there was concern about food restaurants that are selling food for takeaway or to go, as you say in the USA, and that the law is that you have to get the food and then you walk 50 meters away before you can start eating that food. The problem they had was with ice cream parlors, and that the ice cream was melting. So they've now issued an edict in Germany that you are allowed to lick the ice cream as soon as you buy it at the ice cream parlor before you walk away. Well, you're allowed one lick. So I thought that was quite interesting. And I think the great thing about what's happening now is it's a sad time, a bad time, but what's coming out of it that we're seeing is the human angle where people are working together, cooperating, the amount of voluntary work that's being done. It's just amazing the way people are pulling together to get through this thing, and I think it will change the way we behave. I think just socially, it'll change the way we behave technologically, and communicate, and on the way we've treated the environment. I mean, the amount of the contamination of the environment at the moment has gone down dramatically. Less environmental issues, less transport. So it's been an interesting time for everybody. Very sad, of course, because I know in the UK we are still behind the rest of Europe. The death rate is running at about 800 a day at the moment. It's not going down. We expect it to plateau quite soon, end of this week, and then start going down. But we have lockdown in the UK until the end of May, beginning of May. And I think in other countries in Europe, France, it's about the same. Spain seems to be coming out of it, and Italy. The concern I think we have in the UK is whether there's going to be a second wave of this, whether it comes back, it mutates into something else and comes back, which of course is what happened in 1918, and when it did mutate, and then we had all those deaths. Hopefully, the technology has changed, improved dramatically in the healthcare sector, and that should not happen. That's where we are with COVID-19. I think in terms of where I am, my background is in turnaround and transformation. So it's an interesting time for me, as well as looking after NMS. NMS is interested in Europe. I'm actually running a company as CEO in the rail sector across Europe, which is a challenging time as well. And my background is I'm an engineer. I'm also a senior advisor to the industry advisor to the European Bank of Recovery and Development, which is focused on East Europe. So I spent a lot of time in Russia. I lived in Moscow for a while, helping with the Russian economy, helping businesses to recover and survive and thrive. So now is a challenging time, and I think the issue to me is more about how we recover rather than purely how we get through this. We're finding in the UK certainly that companies are managing their cash flow very well with government support to get through this difficult time. Some are not. Some of the smaller companies, like hairdressers, those in hospitality, are closing down, but others are managing to get through it. What they're now facing is how we recover the business once we come out of COVID-19.
What would you counsel companies to be thinking about right now as they start looking at, how coronavirus is plateauing off and how they should be thinking about emerging from this?
Well, if you're going through a classic turnaround or a transformation of a business, there are 5 steps basically. First is to do the diagnostic, to understand what the issues are. The second stage is to implement short-term measures to keep the ship afloat. The third stage is to start planning, and you may do that in parallel with the short-term measures. Then you implement the plan and you manage it going forward. I think it's understanding where we are and what the issues will be once we come out of COVID-19. No cash for many companies. They may have a debtor book. They've pulled in the debtors. They've collected the cash from their customers. There's none left. They may have taken on loans, so they've got added debt to service going forward. Customers may have not gone away. Customers may not have the same capital to actually spend at the same rate. They may be struggling as well, and they may have difficulty with suppliers who are not there. So we have almost a startup scenario. It's not just recovery, it's starting up again. So they're the issues. So I think the first thing is to understand where those issues be. And I think for smaller companies, and I work mainly with SMEs, small to medium enterprises, is understanding what the problems might be, understanding where your customers are. And that is, to me, about communication. So with the company I'm running in in Durham, in the north of England, we're talking to customers and suppliers on a daily basis almost, understanding where they are, so we can come up with John's joined us, I can see, that we can understand where they are. I think it's keeping close to that, so you understand what the issues are going to be coming out of COVID-19. Secondly, I think is what I've said is then the recovery plan, building a plan as how you're going about it. Where you're going to get cash from, because I think access to finance is going to be challenging. Not that it may not be there, it's that because there are going to be so many people looking for the same finance and going to the same pot of money. I think that's going to be one of the challenges. So I think the recovery plan to me is the first step. I don't know if John agrees with that. I've noticed
We'll turn back to John in just a moment here, but I wanted to follow up on linking those two things, Europe and the predicament that a lot of companies are in right now. We have some folks on who are in foods and other distribution-heavy industries, and what should they be thinking of at the moment as to their distribution lines, their transportation lines, the reliability of being able to get their products to market, whether those are packaged goods or in restaurants perhaps. What insights could you offer as to the things that they might do well by thinking ahead for?
I think in many ways, coming out of this, things should not be different. It depends what their distribution channels are and who they're working with. I think logistics is going to be more difficult because we know that transport is going to be a bit more prohibitive going forward. Coming out of this, there are going to be various constraints. in Europe, I mean, we've got issues obviously with Brexit at the moment. Trading between the UK and Europe is not a problem until this thing happened. So I think if you're in the wholesale, in the distribution network, at the moment, I know that companies are supplying. There are deliveries. I think if it's what I've said before, it's a question of keeping very, very close to your customers, to your supply base, and making sure that those are on board with going forward. Otherwise, I don't believe that coming out of this, things will be that much different in terms of how distribution is structured. I think it's just going to be more difficult in terms of actual transport networks themselves. I think that's going to be the challenge.
And are there any territories that you're seeing that would warrant closer examination, either because their testing or reporting is not quite right, or they've been particularly hit hard? What would be your advice on, how they keep an eye on the continent itself?
The areas that are suffering are obviously hospitality, and anything that associated with hospitality, supplying into restaurants, hotels, etc. There's a loss of business there. So I think what we'll find is a number of suppliers are no longer there. They may have gone bankrupt, gone bust. That's going to be the problem, finding new suppliers. I think in terms of trading across Europe, there are some countries that are more advanced in terms of resolving COVID-19 than others. Some, like Denmark, we mentioned, is probably a little bit ahead of many other countries. Some are further behind, like the UK is still well behind. It could be end of May before we actually are in a position to start communicating and transporting again. So I think that's going to be a difficulty. It depends which countries we're talking about, etc. Some countries are made more belligerent, more rigid in terms of the lockdown. Others are more flexible. So I think there you've got to understand your market, understand your country, and it's down to communication and keep in touch with what's going on with your customer and your supply base.
Now we're over to John, our illustrious partner from Frankfurt, coming to us from Milwaukee today. We see his living room. How are you doing, John?
Thank you for saying that. I try to make sure that there's not too much of a mess here. I have 2 dogs, a cat, and 3 children. So you see what you get today. I'm doing good after some technologically challenging times trying to dial into here. I'm very pleased to be with you today. These are challenging times for everybody. I've been on the phone more these last few weeks than ever. I am a person who prefers in-person meetings. As Julian knows, I travel almost every week in normal times throughout the country. I put about 230,000 miles on a plane when times are normal. In those times, I complain about traveling too much. Now I'm starting to miss it, especially when I have my children pulling on my sleeve and the dogs wanting to go out in, and more than I want to. But this is great. I'm really appreciative of Julian putting this together. I think we're going to be doing a lot of these. I think I agree with you, Harry. Thanks for joining us, Harry. That times are going to be different after this, where all of us collectively, and I don't know who's on the call here today. We were inundated with webinars before this happened, and I'm sure we all very selectively decided which ones to join, which ones not. And I've actually become much more liberal with joining them because, like you said, Harry, communications is the key, not only from a business perspective, but also from a social perspective. We are humans. We need human contact. We need to interact. And technology is helping do that today. So, Julian, my hat off to you. I love partnering with you and Get Global, and I look forward to doing many, many more of these seminars, webinars, and hopefully soon live conferences again in the foreseeable future.
You know it. So Frankfurt is a special case because it's a hub city, really critical for distribution and accessing the rest of Europe. Mm-hmm. So that means that not only do you get to know a lot about Frankfurt in Germany, but you also get to know about how companies enter, expand, handle Europe. What are you seeing on the ground there? and what insights can you offer that would probably be helpful to our audience today?
Sure, Julian. Well, let me clarify just for one moment. You know, people don't need to know about who I am and where I'm from and what I do, but I think I have a duty to clarify briefly. You said Frankfurt. It's not just Frankfurt. I represent the greater Frankfurt Rhine-Main area, which is comprised of, last I knew, was 28 shareholders. If anybody from my office is on the call, let me know if the number is outdated, but it's 28 the last time I checked. And we actually reach across the border into two different southern states, to Rheinland-Pfalz, I think the Americans call it Rhineland-Palatinate, which is Mainz. Those of you who've been to Germany, and then also to the northern tip of Bavaria, with, I believe it's Aschaffenburg. So we're not just regional within the state of Hessen, but we also reach across the borders. And it's a regional economic development area that seeks to help companies from abroad with a soft landing when they are looking for investments in Europe and in Germany. With regard to logistics, Julian, I heard Harry's concerns earlier, and I'd like to differ just a little bit there. Yes, Frankfurt is a major, major hub, not only within Germany, but also within Europe when it comes to distribution of goods and services for that matter. One thing that I recently learned myself and didn't know until a few weeks ago is that we are the busiest internet hub, the busiest digital hub in the whole world in Frankfurt. More internet traffic comes through Frankfurt than anywhere in the world. So that makes us really attractive to data centers, to call centers, and anybody who has a digital business to partake in. But from a classic logistics distribution of goods perspective, Frankfurt is one of the largest airports in Europe. We have a multimodal transportation system there. We're connected to a spider web of autobahns, interstates. For those of you who don't know what the Autobahn is, we are also connected to a very dense rail system. At least in normal times, these were all working very well. And we also have the rivers Main and Rhine flowing either through or past our state. So we have a very, very intricate multimodal distribution system. When we talk to our friends at UPS and FedEx and others that actually are in the business of logistics, those of you who stay at home, those of you who are now ordering food online, those of you who are ordering clothing and whatever it is you used to buy in stores, you know that those logistics businesses have encountered a boom. And I have a feeling that culturally, moving forward from a consumer's perspective, the logistics environment is going to change, and I think it's going to have a lasting impact on us after the environment of the virus is gone. I think maybe not all of the people that are currently ordering online and having things delivered multiple times a day. I'm amazed at how much my kids and my wife can order a day. I mean, I got 5 or 6 deliveries here every day. I know that only because the dogs bark at them when they come, but it's just amazing the amount of stuff you can buy online and that people are buying online. That is not going to go away, I think. And from a business perspective, I think that's going to change as well. There will be a need. Without distribution, there is no commerce. So that's going to impact us for a long, long time, even after the virus.
So John, I'm curious about what the mood on the street is in Germany with consumers, with businesses, and with government. How are they thinking about the recovery? How are they responding? So if it's consumers, are they buying? If it's businesses, how are they positioned? Are they talking about changing? What are you seeing from the folks that you deal with?
Well, it's not very much unlike it is here in the United States. The mood is optimistic. People have a mostly positive outlook that things are going to return to normalcy fairly soon. Everybody obviously is frustrated with the restrictions on our social environment and so forth. But are people buying? Of course, people need to buy food, so they go and buy food. There are restrictions, there are space requirements. As you've probably seen, the German government has unitedly among the 16 states and the federal government decided that stores can reopen now. However, there are some size restrictions. Your store can't be larger than 800, or at least the sales area, the commerce area of your store cannot be larger than 800 square meters. There have to be the social, distancing requirements need to be upheld. But I think commerce is going to return very, very, very soon. I'll tell you from my perspective, you are seeing me right now with my hair longer than it's been since college. I'm excited to see that in Germany they're opening hair salons again. I would love to be able to go to a hair salon right now, and I think my wife and kids would prefer that too. But no, I think commerce is coming back. People are optimistic, with the exceptions that you see in the news, both from the States and in Germany. There are protests. People want to get back to normal life. You need to weigh individual rights compared to the rights of social welfare as a society. You see people here, and I'm appalled at that. People here in the United States protest. They get their guns and they go protest. I mean, they're armed protests, not that they're shooting or anything, but they're there demonstratively. That is something I could never envision in Germany. But then you have those who unreasonably go out and gather in parks and have coronavirus parties and stuff like that. Something I might have done when I was still in college, but no, it's completely irresponsible. I don't know if you heard the doorbell, but I think there's a delivery coming right now. So yes, distribution is well and alive.
So Harry, we had a question on restaurants and the food business in the UK from someone who is in that industry. What is your sense of whether or not restaurants will be opening up anytime soon, and what the situation is surrounding that? Is there any indication that you're seeing?
Not at all at the moment, no. If I can relate to locally, and my small village, about 300 people in the village, and we have the village pub, which has been closed, to the great disappointment of everyone. There's no plans at all for them to open, and they're looking at the end of May, possibly June. The restaurants that we go to locally, again, all closed. Some of them are offering takeaway food. You can go and collect it, you'll rig them up and prepare a meal, and you can take it away. And indeed, our little village pub tried to do the same thing. There's been no date yet. It is a big bone of contention in the UK. We've got the government saying we're not in a position to actually talk about reopening restaurants or indeed non-food retail shops. And we've got the opposing party, the Labour Party, saying, well, we need to have a plan because the economy needs to get back on its feet, and we need a point where restaurants and retailers in general are opening up again. So at the moment, there's no foreseeable date. But amazingly, the restaurants are finding other things to do, providing food for the NHS, the National Health Service, for hospitals, etc. A lot of them doing it free of charge, of course. As I said, and providing food that you can go and collect yourself. But it's being hit quite badly.
Yeah. We also had another question from a participant saying they want to know more about how to reorganize right now and how companies should be thinking about reorganization, especially vis-a-vis their customer base, and measuring the size and hunger of that base, and what folks should be doing. So this person is asking for a little bit more along those lines. What would you counsel?
On that, I would take what I call a greenfield situation. So if we say, look at the business, and what we tend to do with the business is look at what we've got and try to change it and improve it. And sometimes it's good to look at the business and say, let's put everything to one side. Let's put the people outside in the car park and assume that we've got no customers, and what do we want to be? So it's almost start afresh. So where might our customers be? What are our strengths as a business? What can we do? What capacities do we have? And start afresh. It's far easier to upsize a business, to increase the number of employees, to increase your resources, than it is to downsize. Downsizing a business can be very, very difficult. So what I was doing in a transformation program is to say, where does this business want to be, say in 3 years' time or 5 years' time, and then work up with a blank piece of paper where that business we would like it to be, what it would look like in terms of the customers it wants to attract, the people it wants to employ, the products or the services it wants to sell, and build up that model at a very, very high level. Looking at the turnover, the revenue, etc., and building up a model. And then taking that and then looking at where you are now, saying, what are the steps for me to take to get to that ideal business model? So it's about that. It's about putting everything outside and looking at the business afresh as to where you want to be, and then looking at what resources you need to actually achieve your objectives.
Now, speaking of scaling up, we've got a couple of companies on here that I know are actually doing quite well.
Yeah.
Won't name names because it probably isn't the time, but you know, this issue has not been a problem for them. It's been a windfall. How should they capitalize on this moment? It's most likely that their competitors are also experiencing a rising tide, and it's lifting all their boats. But what would you say in a situation like that? Like how should they be thinking about their expansion? How should they be thinking about their customer base? How should they be thinking about the recovery?
Well, it's an interesting question. I've been talking to a number of people, private equity firms, acquirers, other businesses that have some of them in this situation looking for opportunities. So what are the opportunities coming out of this? I think clearly there's going to be companies with problems. They're going to go through some sort of insolvency process. So I can see a lot of activity in the professional sectors, but also a lot of companies that are struggling, that haven't got cash, that are looking for access to finance, may not get it. And it's also, I think, an opportunity for acquisitions. So it may be that the companies you're talking about who are successful in their own sector may want to look at other sectors, may want to diversify, maybe want to expand horizontally or vertically through the supply chain and make acquisitions if they're in they've got the wherewithal to do that. And I think there'll be a lot of that going on. I know people that are talking to me and saying, this is an opportunity for us to acquire businesses at a lower price and increase, our profile in that particular sector, or go into new markets. So my suggestion is to think about that. Buy and build strategies, acquisition, and diversification.
Excellent. Now I want to remind everybody that we are taking questions on Slack. I'm seeing a few come in through the Q&A tab here, which is great. But if y'all want to chat later, reach out to one another, exchange ideas, build on this, post articles, Slack is where it's at. So, so do post your questions there. So this is the part of the discussion where I actually would like to take some questions and measure what you're all feeling. We have two really highly experienced people on here. And in the meantime, I'm going to go back to John and ask a little bit more about regional Europe. So north, south, east, and west. What are you seeing? And then Harry, I'll come back to you about Russia because I know that you've spent time there, and it's probably an interesting case right now. John, do tell, please. The regional outlook on Europe. I know that you deal with the logistics companies a lot. I know that you deal with all kinds of companies that are either having problems or opportunities. Give us a breakdown.
Thanks, Julian. Before I go there, I want to follow up briefly to the question you posed of Harry just a minute ago. Did anybody in this audience ever realize how many people, how many companies are out there that on the drop of a dime can make other products? I'm talking about all of those companies that are retooling to make gowns, to make masks, to make gloves. Did you realize how flexible industry is? I didn't. I sure as heck did not know that a motorcycle company in Milwaukee could turn around and make respirators. I did not know that companies like Jockey Underwear could make, well, you could put underwear over your head if you wanted to, and it could serve as a mask. But did you know that these companies can retool on the drop of a dime? That's my outlook on the economy and on business in the future. Business is going to be much more flexible, much more nimble. They're going to have a much more forward-going outlook and a more flexible outlook on the products they make, and keeping in mind on what other products they can add that may or may not relate to their core business. So that, I just wanted to put that out there for food for thought. It was just amazing to see how many thousands and thousands of companies, not just in the United States, but all around the world, on the drop of a dime, retooled. We have microbreweries here. Milwaukee is known for beer. We have microbreweries that are retooling to make hand sanitizer with the same alcohol that they use to make our beer. Now, I would prefer to drink the beer, but you know, just think about the amazingness of what companies can do when they put their mind to it. Just wanted to put that out there for food for thought. Regionally in Germany, and in Europe and Germany, Julia, to get back to your question that you actually asked directly of me, I can tell you in my business, you know, in normal times, it is a hard sell to have an investor from North America, from around the world, to decide to come to Germany and manufacture something there. Because as everybody knows, labor cost is typically relatively high. It's not the highest, but it's relatively high compared to other neighboring countries. And Harry may, compared to Russia, it's not, but some of the Eastern European countries like Romania, Poland, and so forth, Hungary, is relatively high. But if you think about the current situation, while during normal times, the advantages of locating in Germany far outweigh the labor cost. And I don't want to get into that right now in particular. And in fact, Julian, I'd like to take you up and give my contact information to anybody who's on the in the audience here today. If they have any individual questions that they don't necessarily want to ask now, they can ask me, and I'll be very happy to help them offline after this conference. But look at the current situation, which none of us expected. But Germany, because of its environment, has one of the strongest social welfare networks in the world, not just in Europe, but in the world. Look at healthcare. Look at what Germany is doing, what German companies are able to do for their employees. We're keeping having to let people go, having to fire people during this crisis that nobody conjured up, at a minimum, simply and because of our social welfare network. We have the ability to provide what they call, I don't know what, I have not tried to translate it in English, Kurzarbeit, is shortening the hours that you work during the week. I think, don't quote me on it, but I think it's about 70% of your normal pay. You still are at work, you get a little less money, but you're still employed. And the company stays viable that way. The employees stay employed, and the economy continues to flourish on a, yes, somewhat lower pace, but it still is there. And because of those things that are in place in the German system, the economy in Germany is going to be able to pick up so much sooner, so much quicker when this crisis is over than other countries that had to lay off their employees. The United States is doing a great job at that too, by the way, by providing a loan package to companies with up to 500 employees for a 2-month period. If these companies promise, and if they can prove after the fact that they use that loan to cover the payroll for their employees for that 2-month period, that loan will actually be forgiven. And the whole purpose behind that is to keep the economy at a nimble, flexible pace, that when this virus is over, we can just hit the ground running and continue almost where we left off before the virus. But regionally speaking, I'm just Germany, I think, is in a much better place than a lot of other countries in Europe. I talk to friends in Italy, for example, where there is some European funding available, but it's only available for the healthcare sector. I have friends over there who own small businesses with 30, 40, 50 employees. It's a horrible situation over there. Germany is a very competitive, a very viable marketplace, not only in good times, but also in challenging times like right now.
So this is directly relevant, of course, to how consumers are going to rebound from all of this. Every consumer, or most consumers, have a job, and they need to be ready to come back at some point. So how do you compare? So how would you say the other social safety net programs across Europe are structured, and how will that affect consumer demand? Decrease the pain that consumers are feeling.
Well, consumer demand, if you want to use that as a buzzword for a second, consumer demand is based primarily on per capita spending power. So income that individuals have in Europe. That obviously is going to depend highly on how many people remain employed after this crisis. Germany is going to come out of this really, really well. The Frankfurt Rhine-Main area is going to come out of this really well because a lot of the products are being made, a lot of the logistics jobs, a lot of the services are provided, are essential, and are on the forefront of the global economy. So while some people are losing their jobs, not as many as across the rest of Europe will lose their jobs. That's going to affect per capita purchasing power. That's going to boost the economy in Germany because people will come out of this with more money in their pockets to buy stuff. Everybody obviously is buying food right now, but we're talking about the consumables that go beyond just the necessities of daily life. There are countries in the rest of there are European programs that are funding member states in this crisis, but nobody, I think, is in the same situation as Germany is because of its internal programs that have nothing really to do with the extended European programs. This Kurzarbeit thing, that's not something that a lot of other countries are doing. Unemployment regulations are pretty liberal. There are a lot of social networks and systems in place in Germany that have been there for decades, that were there before the crisis, that are helping us through this crisis, and that it will be probably even stronger after this crisis. So I think Germany stands strong as it does politically, as it does economically, in the center of Europe, as it has for a long time, but especially now during this crisis. And I think Germany will probably be, if not it will be a major leader bringing the whole of European Union through this.
Harry, what's your outlook on the regional government response and how they'll be assisting consumers with the rebound?
Yeah. First of all, coming to what John was saying about Germany, I do endorse that. Spent a lot of time, particularly in Berlin, and we're seeing the growth in the German economy. It's very strong, very robust, and certainly the employment conditions are very, very good there. That's why it's a good place. It is a good place to invest in. It's a good place to develop, and that's why we're there at MS, because we're seeing management consultancy say it's got the fastest growth in Germany of all the countries in Europe, growing faster than the UK. In terms of what's available in the UK, it's very good. In terms of employees, then employers, we call it furlough, which is actually an American term that we've come to terms with here. It's a new word for us, furlough.
Yeah. So
we're furloughing staff. People do ask me, say, what's this word furlough? What does it mean? I have to explain to them. Just to go back to is it back to the army, is it? With the furloughing from the army or something? It's an American term anyway. So we're furloughing staff. And so I've, in one of my companies, furloughed 150 staff. We are guaranteed to get 80% of their salaries, their gross gross wages back from the government. They will pay 80% up to a maximum of £2,500 GBP, British pounds, which is very, very good. The banks are also putting out loans. So you can possibly get a loan from between £5 up to £5 million from the banks, which is 80% guaranteed by the government. That's guaranteed to the banks. So if the company falls over, the bank will get their money back, 80% of it back from the government. But also other schemes and other soft loans available for 3 months for companies, and mortgages for individuals. One can get a 3-month holiday on your mortgage for your home. Credit card lenders also have been told to offer the same facility, 3-month holiday from your credit card payments. Interest rates will still be there, and the debt will still be there, but there is that break of 3 months that's available. So it's quite robust. The downside of that, of course, is that all we're doing is deferring the debt in many cases, and we've got to catch up with that at some point. absolutely. So that's where we are in the UK. So it's quite good. It's how long it will last. Hopefully, it will not last the full 3 months.
We got another question, and then we'll turn to Russia. So this is from Senator Ron Johnson's office, Sean Bray. This is for both Harry and John. The EU, unlike the US, is much more reliant on banking for business loans, while the US is, oh shoot, it got deleted. Well, Sean, we'll come back to that question in just a moment.
Okay.
If you put it back, oh wait, no, I think it just got into the answered category.
You know what? I was answering Sean, and maybe I did something to get that moved from your inbox there, my friend.
Yeah, I'll manage that. So could you ask them to add their thoughts on how an improved capital markets union in the EU could help in the aftermath of the pandemic? Over to you, John. Let's hear from what your thoughts are.
I'm not an expert in the capital markets, but you know, there's always improvement with regard to the capital markets. But if you look back, Sean, you specifically, or he's right back. I see him right in front of me, Julian. So he just he's right here. I don't know if he. I think I probably deleted that because I didn't want you to answer it, something like that.
It's okay.
He's my Wisconsin senator, so I wanted to make sure that was going to stay between us. But either way, you know, the capital markets in Germany have been, and Europe have been extraordinarily strong. If you look back to 2008, 2009, Europe, Germany were the first to come back. The German economy is one that thrives on small to medium-sized businesses. And culturally speaking, Germans are very frugal. The reason Germany came through the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009 so well is because the small and medium-sized family-owned businesses did not expend capital on machinery and improvements and upgrades if they didn't have the cash to do so. They are very cash rich over there, and that's why the German economy came through the crisis back then faster and more, I'd say, rigid than everybody else afterwards. And I think that's going to hold true right now as well. You've got the social welfare system, not only in the for private citizens, but also for companies. That's going to allow it. That these are not subsidies; these are just systemic tools that are in place to help companies stay afloat. The United States, and Sean and Senator Johnson's office will know that much better than any of us here. The program, the loan program we have in place right now, and it's going to be funded again. I hope. I haven't seen the news yet today, Sean, and I know Senator Johnson is playing a pivotal role in all this. Capital markets are strong in Europe. Can there be some improvement? Of course, there always can. But you know, I'm not in on the regulatory side of capital markets, so I'm going to leave it that. In some cases, I know just enough to be dangerous, Sean, and I'd love to talk to you offline and get you more information on that, and get you and the senator more information on that offline that I can ask for, but I don't have at my fingertips right now.
Harry, what's your outlook? What do you think?
Likewise with John, I'm not the world's expert on capital markets. Interesting what John was saying there. In the UK, certainly, there's a lot of funding around, a lot of money around. The PEs, the VCs, the venture capitalists, the VCTs are all very active. And we have something in Britain called the British Business Bank, which is a government-sponsored conglomeration of all the banks, all the major banks in the UK, who are actively looking for investments through debt, etc. So we've got a very active marketplace. So access to finance in the UK is very, very good, providing you meet the criteria, of course, the financial criteria. So the capital market is the same as Europe, more or less. It's very active, very strong.
We also have another question from a high-profile Bulgarian official who is asking about the German auto industry and how that's looking. What would you expect from the German auto industry? And the reason why she's asking is that a lot of Bulgarian companies are suppliers to the German auto industry. So any particular thoughts there, Harry?
I think that's probably one more for John than me. I don't know the German automotive market. I don't know about I drive a German car, but Mercedes. But I don't
I would
know
certainly hope you do.
Sorry?
I would certainly hope you drive a German car.
I do, yes. Mercedes, yes. Very nice.
Wrong kind, but that's okay.
John, what do you think?
Well, I actually answered that question offline just a minute ago, very briefly in one sentence. But my take on that is that the automotive industry will come back. The automotive industry will require its suppliers. Without suppliers, there will not be cars. The example is Tesla and all that. Tesla is really just a battery company that assembles cars on the side, and without the suppliers, Tesla would not be able to make any cars because it needs all the parts that are fitted around the battery to make the car. The automotive industry, not only in Germany but in the world, will come back. Maybe not as strong, maybe not very quickly, because it's not very nimble. It's large. It's really huge. So it's going to be really tedious to bring that back to the current level. But my short answer to the question was, we all drive cars. We all will need cars for a long time to come, be it battery-driven cars, be it regular cars like we all drive right now. People need cars. People need to get around. Yes, in my opinion, the automotive industry will be coming back.
Okay. Now, I want to touch on Russia for a second for a few reasons. It doesn't really get discussed much in Get Global. The attention just really hasn't been there on the Russian economy. They've been mischievous actors on the world stage, but that mischief is an interesting dynamic right now, not only because we're coming up on an election, but also because the information apparatus in Moscow is tight. So I'm wondering, what would you expect, Harry, from Russian behavior in a business and economic context under the current environment?
I've not been in Moscow Russia for a long time, but we are looking at it with various businesses. It's a market that most people are reticent about going into at the moment because of the politics and so forth. And I think there's reticence amongst the Russian business community about how they deal with the West. Back in the 1990s, when I was more active there, working with the EBRD, the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development, a lot of money was being poured, millions and millions of billions of dollars were being poured into Russia and all the Eastern countries coming out of the Soviet Union. That's gone away. That's not happening to the same degree, but there are great opportunities there, and I think it is like a lot of countries. It's having the feet on the ground. It's having the right contacts there. It's having the local people that can represent you if you want to get into that market. There are two Russias. We always used to say there's the European Russia and there's the Asian Russia, and you've got to think about the culture of which one you're dealing with. Moscow, we see seen as being European, obviously. So that it's a big country. It's a huge country. You just look on the global map, you can see that it's absolutely enormous. So my view is, think about it. Well, there's great opportunities there. It's a massive economy. It's going to continue to grow, I think. And I think it's a question of how is the best way to get in there. And it's possibly through joint ventures, alliances, and having the right people on the ground and understanding the culture. But we often talk about Russia, but we don't often talk about the other countries close by, like Ukraine. Ukraine is a growing economy. There's a lot going on in Ukraine at the moment, and I think that's an interesting country to be looking at. We've also got the Baltic states. The Baltic states are great. Everybody speaks English, seems to be. So I think for American, British companies working over there,
they speak American English, not British English.
Sorry.
They speak American English, not British.
No, I used to sell what we call ELT, English language teaching, into Moscow, into this university.
I'm just trying to tease you there, Harry.
Sorry?
I'm just trying to tease you.
But we had to compete against American English. Tomato and tomato. Yes.
Lorry or truck.
That's right. Yeah, lorry or a truck. That's right. At the end of the day, it's the same. We speak it the same language. But it's an interesting market. But think about the Baltic states, think about Ukraine, as well as Russia.
Well, I'm very glad that you settled the ages-long question of whether Russia is European or Asian or something distinct.
I'm glad this question is settled for you, Julian.
Harry did it. He's a wizard. So,
oh my goodness.
So when you and I spoke on the phone, Harry, you mentioned quite a few other markets that you are looking at that are interesting to you. And you singled out India, which is my country of specialty, but you mentioned a few others.
Yeah, beyond the boundaries of Europe and the UK, it's just exciting things happening everywhere. India is one market that we're looking at. Yes, and in India, the government is investing in 11 smart cities and all the infrastructure around that, including public transport, construction, new business opportunities. It's a fascinating country. If you look at a city like Mumbai, we're heavily populated. The trains there, when I looked at it on behalf of this, the train company that I'm working with at the moment, we looked at it and I went on to the internet, onto Google, the trains, Mumbai, and then I watched a TV program on the BBC television here in the UK about Mumbai trains, and it showed all these people pouring into the city on trains that had no doors, no windows, people hanging on the outside, absolutely packed. You had to fight to get in them. And I thought, is this a market for rail? Well, then I spoke to some people in India that are involved in that industry, in that sector, and it's changing. The metro line in Mumbai is air conditioned. It has glass windows. It has doors. It's far more sophisticated than the underground in London. There's a lot of investment going into rail, public transport in general, and construction. India is a booming economy. It's going forward in leaps and bounds, and I think it's a good place to be. But it's like Russia. I think our experience is you've got to have the local content. You've got to have people on the ground that you can work with to represent you.
That is 100% true. As someone who has spent a lot of time there and has helped companies navigate India, you've really got to have someone who knows what the deal is.
Yeah.
And you mentioned rail.
If I may, Julian, just a second, I can second all of that. I am by far stretched no expert in India, never been there. I hope to get there one day, but India is a very, very important market for us in Frankfurt Rhine-Main region. We have an office over there that's very, very well staffed with some excellent people. It's one of the most productive markets for us with regard to investors that are looking for the European and the German markets. So India absolutely is on the radar. It's on the radar worldwide, and it's on the radar for us at Frankfurt Rhine-Main.
And that makes a lot of sense, and I see a lot of German folks in India. There's an interesting India-Germany relationship. The German Marshall Fund, for instance, does a lot there. Mm-hmm. But you mentioned rail, Harry, and the rail ministry is so large that it has its own budget. So there's the national budget, and then you've got the rail budget. Interesting little factoid. I wanted to come back to your EBRD experience. What's that?
It's EBRD, European
EBRD. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So what is the word inside the EBRD? That's probably an interesting place to be listening right now.
I think it is, and I'd advise the participants to Google that, European Bank of Reconstruction and Development. I just put in EBRD, and you can get onto their website. It tells you all the things they're doing. You can get regular emails on their activities, which are in Europe and primarily in Eastern Europe, places like Uzbekistan and other countries that we don't hear of, Bulgaria. A lot of it is about infrastructure, investing in utilities, in transport, etc. And there's a lot of money available for the right kind of projects. They will use technical experts in certain fields to actually support companies applying for funding, in energy, in the environment, and they'll bring in experts to actually help them to manage that funding or to resolve issues. It's also about companies wanting to get into new markets. So we've got developing countries in East Europe want to get into new markets, don't know how to do it. They need support on marketing, finding new customers, etc. It's done some great work. It's been going since, I think, the early 1990s, 92. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, but I think it's been I've been involved since the 1990s anyway.
Yes, and I think that brings us roughly to the end. Y'all have been so quiet on Slack today. But we have a very large presence here on the Zoom. So now's your chance. If you've got one last question, you can ask it. Otherwise, we'll wind it down.
And
Anyone?
Julian, like I said before, if anybody wants to talk to me offline, I'd be very happy to entertain questions, phone call, email, whatever. So make sure you provide everybody my personal contact information, please.
Okay. That brings me to one more point. You can call Frankfurt Rhein-Main for anything. They are a government-funded agency. So I think, like most economic development organizations, they're proto-official and operate on their own, but they are funded that way. So that means you can call up John anytime and ask him for help, and he can help you, and he will. NMS, same deal,
Yeah.
except not for free, but they do work with small and medium-sized enterprises, which means that even though sometimes we drift into big company talk, they're used to dealing with a lot of the issues that that small and medium-sized enterprises are part of, and we've got participants on this call that are both big and small. So yeah, you should reach out to NMS and to Harry for help if you need it in Europe and with turnarounds. So going once, going twice. Any questions? Oh, there's one here. Why is the US so different from France in the plan to reopen? Ergo, in France, schools are in phase 1, but not in the US. In US, restaurants are in phase 1. Such discrepancies. So basically,
I take it that's for me.
Well, asking two
Unless,
Germany experts about France is sure to be fun.
or the US, yeah. Harry, you go first if you'd like.
I don't really know. I think it's down to politics, isn't it? Down to the politicians. Every country seems to have a different view on this. You know, in this country, we've been beating ourselves up that we started too late. There was a view that we should go for the herd community. We should allow this thing to spread, and then we build up resistance to it. But that changed after 2 or 3 weeks, and then we followed everybody else. But what I've seen, they must apply to France and the USA, that everybody's been doing it differently. One thing is to ask about it is hindsight, and everybody with hindsight is saying, no, we should have done it a different way. We could have done it better. But that's true of life in general, isn't it? Though?
I don't think President Trump will think the same way as you just described it, but
I think you're right. Yeah.
So what's your view on the French, John?
from the well, you know what? Let me look at the list of participants. I want to see if there's anybody from France in here.
No French folks.
I don't. Well, you just hey Julian, you're trying to set me up here. You never know. But no, I agree with Harry. There is a huge political aspect to this. There's a huge re-election aspect to this. People in politics think strategically when it comes to these decisions. On the other hand, I will tell everybody right now, even my friends who swear up and down that I did not vote for him, but I think he's done a tremendous job in a number of different areas. You can't agree with him on everything. His rhetoric is crappy, but he's done a pretty good job in a lot of ways. The way we're looking at it here in the United States and how we differ from France is that we have a number of different Frances in the United States, geopolitically, geographically, population-wise. So we are taking more of a regional approach with regard to this. That's why you're seeing in the news that one area, one city, one state might be opening up the economy sooner than the other. You see more restrictive measures in one state than the other. It's because we're treating every little region differently from the other based on the outcomes, based on the testing, based on the deaths and all that kind of stuff. So you cannot compare the United States to an individual European country like Italy, France, or Germany based on just the nature of them. We have different population scenarios here. We have different infrastructure here. So I think my personal opinion as a private US and German citizen, we're faring really well here in the United States. Can things in hindsight have been done better? I'm pretty darn sure that they could have. But you know what? We live in today, and we work with the tools that we have, and I think things are well. The French are doing with their situation the best that they can, and I think the United States are doing the same with what's available to us here.
Well, we always have a plurality of views here at Get Global, and I am glad that today is no different. Harry, John, thank you so much for doing this, for making the time and lending your expertise. Folks on the line, if you need them for anything, please do reach out or ask me. You can email me. I'm that guy emailing you all the time, and you can hit me up on Slack too.
Yeah, don't ask Julian. Come straight to me.
Well, if the benefit is that if you ask me, then I get to remind you. All right, guys. Thank
Julian,
you all
thank
so
you
much.
for the opportunity. This was wonderful. Thank you.
I'm so glad you liked it.
Yep.
See y'all soon. Thank you.
Bye.